Okay, let's get started. Hopefully you guys can hear and see me okay. Actually, can somebody post in the chat if you can hear me okay? Just to make sure. Okay, great. So it looks like people can hear me. So let's go ahead and get started. Well, hello everyone. Lunchtime info session for cyber, fun stuff. My name's Mark Davis. I'm on the leadership team here at Fullstack, and I run Fullstack Cyber Bootcamp along with a really talented team of people. So I'm looking forward to spending some time with you over the next 45 minutes or so. If you want to connect with me after the talk, you can just find me on Twitter at Digitize My Life. My DMs are open. So in this talk, let me just get my screen set up properly here. So first I want to give you an introduction to Fullstack Cyber Academy, and then zoom into Fullstack Cyber Bootcamp. I want to start by talking about sort of the big picture of what's happening in cyberspace and why this is creating an opportunity for people who are going into this particular field. Then I want to give an overview of the program, very high level, and then we'll do a deep dive into the curriculum, what we're actually teaching in this program. And then I'll talk about next steps if you want to apply to get into this program, and then we'll do Q&A at the end. So if you have any questions as we go, just hold on to them, or actually just post them in chat as you think of them, and then at the end we'll circle back and we'll go through all the questions that are in the chat. Don't worry about furiously taking notes. We will email you the slides that you're about to see tomorrow. So you'll get a PDF version of these slides, and we'll send it to the same address that you used when you registered for this event. So before we get started here, if any of you are already considering a career in cybersecurity, then you've probably got more questions than answers at this point. So for example, where would I start? What would I need to learn? How hard would it be to learn that stuff? Would I actually like the day-to-day work? What would my career path look like? And how much money would I make if I go into this field? That's an important question for any career considerations. So we're going to answer those questions and some more as we go through the talk. So quick introduction to Fullstack Academy. So we were born in Y Combinator. If any of you have ever heard of Y Combinator out on the West Coast, it's a technology incubator and fund that different companies have been born there, like Airbnb, Dropbox, a number of companies that you've heard of out on the West Coast. We were started here in New York City. Now we have campuses in Chicago and online. Actually, I should update this slide. We also have a campus in California as well, San Luis Obispo, partnership with Cal Poly out there. We're actually the top ranked coding bootcamp in the United States. So if you Google, obviously here today we're going to be talking about the cybersecurity school, but just to set the stage here, the coding school. If you Google, course student reviews for Fullstack, you'll see that on average, we get about 4.9 out of 5 stars reviews from our students. That's really important to us because we work really hard to earn those reviews. It keeps us really focused on delivering a great experience and outcomes for our students. So one thing we like to say here is we're a little bit crazy about outcomes. And by outcomes, we mean getting hired after you finish the program. So if you look at where our graduates work on the coding school side, companies like Facebook and Google and Apple and Spotify, and actually a bunch of these companies, Google and Spotify, for example, have hired more than 20 of our graduates. So it's a wide range of companies that have hired graduates coming out of Fullstack. Now, just a little bit of history. In 2013, we launched the first cohort of the Coding Bootcamp. In 2016, we launched something called the Grace Hopper program, which is actually the first all-women coding bootcamp in New York City, and the first in the country to offer something called deferred tuition. And then this year, we've partnered up with New York City. Actually, we've been working on this for a couple of years now, but the school opened this year. So we partnered up in New York City to build and launch Fullstack Cyber Bootcamp, which of course we're going to be talking about today. So let's do that. But let's first talk about the big picture of what's happening in cyberspace. And what I actually want to do is put up 3 slides, and I'm just going to read through them because that's sort of the quickest way to set the stage for the story I'm about to tell. Right. So the headline is, it's pretty bad out there. You read it in the news every day. Another huge hack or data breach. The fact is, there's a war being waged in cyberspace right now. And the white hats, the good guys, are losing to the black hats, the bad guys. And this is happening on a massive scale. The cybercrime will cost the world $6 trillion annually within 2 years. We need more white hats. Companies and governments are struggling to keep pace with the dramatic rise in cybercrime. They're trying to hire people with cyber skills, but there is a critical shortage of them in the United States and around the world. Matter of fact, you may have heard in the news today, it came out a couple days ago, but it's in the news today. Department of Homeland Security has declared the cyber talent shortage a national emergency, right? So this is a real problem. And because of that, there will be 3.5 million cybersecurity jobs open by 2021. So help make a difference. What does this mean to you? You came to this talk, that there's an opportunity to get on the cyber battlefield as a white hat hacker and really make a difference. All right, so that's sort of the big picture of what's happening here. Now, if you ask yourself, why is this creating an opportunity for people entering the space? Well, it's simple economics, right? It's supply and demand. So let me put some numbers out there. So right now, there's 3 million open jobs, and you can see the rough distribution geographically of where these jobs are. So about 500,000 open jobs right now in the U.S. for cybersecurity. So not only is that a big number, and that is a big number, by the way, you're going to find very few industries, if any, with this many open jobs. So it's a big number, and it's growing quickly, right? So that number is going to grow, like we just saw, 3.5 million by 2021. And because there's such a shortage of supply relative to demand, that drives up the price of the talent in this field, right? So the average salary for an entry-level security analyst is $85,000. That's here in New York, and that's according to an organization, a nonprofit organization called CyberSeek, that gathers information, sort of salary information in cybersecurity. So not only when you enter this field, if you have the requisite technical skills, do you enter at a relatively high salary band, but you also have a path over the years to grow that salary, right? So every journey is different, but just to give you an example, let's say in year 1, after you complete your training, you enter as an entry-level security analyst at $85K. Year 2, you become a pen tester. Don't worry, I'll explain what that is later. At $102K average salary from CyberSeek. Year 3, cybersecurity engineer, average salary $108K. Year 4, cybersecurity architect, $129K. And it's not uncommon for people to be way north of this number. Matter of fact, when I show this chart to people, I usually get 2 different responses depending on the person. If it's someone who's not in InfoSec, not in cybersecurity, they'll look at this and go, oh, those are pretty high salary numbers. But if you talk to people in InfoSec and show them these numbers, oftentimes they'll say, it's kind of low, right? So, these types of numbers, it's not uncommon for people to get over 200K in salary once you get really established in this field. But this will give you a sense for the data, the most current data that's available in terms of salary bands for these types of jobs. Now, let me throw a couple other numbers out there. Here's one. Cybersecurity professionals have an average salary that's 3 times higher than the national average. Again, it's supply and demand. And the demand for cybersecurity experts is growing 12 times faster than the current US job market, making cybersecurity one of the most highly sought after careers in the country. But first you need to train, grasshopper, right? So if you ask yourself, how long will it take to get the required skills to get hired in cybersecurity? And we'll talk about what the required skills are in a moment here. But just to sort of give you the order of magnitude here, there's different ways you can get the required skills, and there's different amounts of time, right? So how long it takes depends on how you do it, right? So for example, one path is to get an undergraduate degree at a 4-year university, and that would take you probably around 4 years. Or you can get if you already have your undergrad degree, you could get a master's degree in cybersecurity. It'll take you about 2 years. You could try and self-study. It's non-trivial. It's difficult, right? If you're moving along at a pretty good clip, let's say 12 to 18 months, probably closer to 18 to 24, but let's say 12 to 18 months here. Or You could look at attending a cybersecurity boot camp, like what we're talking about here. And typically what you're going to see is either a part-time program that lasts about 6 months or a full-time program that lasts about 3 months. And we're going to be talking about this one here in this talk. So let's do that. Let me give you a very quick thumbnail sketch overview of this program. First of all, the mission of the program is this. We teach motivated students deep foundational skills that are in high demand from employers in New York City and around the world. When our students graduate, we help them land their first job and begin a fast-growing career in cybersecurity where they love what they do every day and feel good about doing something positive for the world. And these last 2 points are really important. I'm gonna circle back to those in a bit. But the basic premise here is that you can go from cybersecurity novice, beginner, to an in-demand cybersecurity professional in 17 weeks. And sort of the journey looks roughly like this. First thing you would do is take an introductory introductory course called Hacking 101, which is 6 hours, which is designed to really capture your imagination about going into this field, and also tell you what it's really like to work in this field and if this is a career path that makes sense for you. Next step is Foundations, which is 4 weeks where you learn some basic concepts that you'll need to learn to get into, to hit the ground running when you get into the boot camp, which lasts 13 weeks. And then when you get through the boot camp, you graduate from Fullstack, you're on something that we call flight, which could last anywhere on average 1 to 3 months. And from the coding boot camp side, on average 1 to 3 months. And during flight, you're spending about half your time doing job search stuff, going to interviews, things like that, and about half of your time doing continuous learning, going deeper into what you studied in the boot camp, with the obvious goal being get hired, right? Either as a security analyst or as a penetration tester. So let's talk. So that's the sketch at a very high level. So let's go into the actual curriculum. What are we teaching in this program? And to do that, I'm going to show you something called the course poster for Fullstack Cyber Bootcamp. So, in the InfoSec world, different cybersecurity schools will oftentimes have a course poster, which is quite simply a poster-sized printout of the curriculum. It shows you what you're in an infographic, shows you what you're learning, the sequence that you're learning in, why you're learning, and how things sort of interrelate to each other, and then what is your target outcome when you get out of the school. So what I want to do is show you the course poster for Fullstack Cyber Bootcamp. So let me just pull that up on another screen. Okay, hopefully you can see that okay. Just post in chat if you're having any issues. But this is the course poster for Fullstack Cyber Bootcamp. And you're not gonna be able to read it at this resolution. Don't worry, I'm gonna zoom into each part as we go through it. But just so you can see at a big picture here, what we're gonna do is follow the student journey down from taking Hacking 101 through here, across week by week through the program, and then what happens when you graduate. So let's start up at the top. So something around my screen. Okay, so first, Hacking 101, like I mentioned, it's a free 6-hour online course to capture your imagination with respect to cybersecurity careers. If in fact it does capture your imagination, the next step is to apply to get into the program. And I often get asked, do I need to have any prerequisite hacking skills to get into the program? And the answer to that is no. You can come in at a beginner level, but you do need to have the basic ability to think logically, reason through puzzles, but no specific technical skills required. So for example, on the admissions exam, we have a bunch of, think of them as kind of like math brain teasers, right? Oops, what happened here? Oh, let me zoom back in. Okay, so here are a couple example questions from the admissions exam. These aren't actual questions on there, but just to give you a sense, right? Number one, consider these numbers. When you see an array of numbers, which of these does not belong? So you may look at those, and if you take a moment just to look at them, you may say, oh, okay, one of them is odd, right? And so that may jump out at you. Here's another question. If dad equals 18, fish equals 84, and feet equals 40, what is the value of beach? Okay, so this one may not leap out at you. It may take you a minute or two to solve, but chances are if you think on it a little bit, try and figure out what kind of an algorithm is happening underneath here, then you'll be able to figure out those questions, the answer to that question. So those are the types of math brain teasers that are on the admissions exam. If you do well on the admissions exam and you pass it, pass the minimum, with the minimum score, then you'll be invited to submit a video interview. So you'll interview with your admissions staff, with the admissions team, but basically you'll be sent a link and with a number of questions. You'll click on the link, it'll turn on your webcam, and you will answer the questions, and then your answers will get sent to our admissions team. And then at that point, if you get accepted into the program, then before you start the program, you'll sign our ethical code of conduct, which is what we call a white hat manifesto, which I'll talk more about in a moment. But the sort of headline here is that, you know, the TTPs, the tools, techniques, and processes that we're teaching in this school, frankly, you know, they can be used for nefarious purposes, right? And so we as a school need to make sure that we're admitting students who are going to be white hats and not black hats. And so that's a whole conversation about how we try and do that. But one thing we do is apply what we call defense in depth. And part of that defense in depth process is we ask our students to sign the ethical code of conduct before we'll admit them into the boot camp and before we'll start training them on these skills. So once you sign the ethical code of conduct, I'll zoom back out here. Then you are ready to start foundations. Okay, so in foundations, you're going to learn basic security and networking concepts, how to work in the command line. So this may be the first time you've ever worked in the command line, and the very basics of Python. So foundations, you're not actually on campus, you're working at home part-time, 25 hours per week, about 25 hours per week for 4 weeks. And you do that at home. And then once you pass foundations, you'll be ready to start the boot camp. So the things we cover in foundations, first of all, computing and networking basics. So in terms of computing basics, things like what's the kernel of the operating system. And then in networking basics, we go into something called the OSI model. There's 7 different levels or layers of the OSI model. And we spend a lot of time on each one. Then you get into security basics, where you're learning things like, you know, basic security concepts around network attacks, difference between vulnerabilities and threats, getting a little bit into crypto, not cryptocurrency, but cryptography, which is an important aspect of cybersecurity. And then you'll get into intro to virtualization in Linux. This is roughly week 3 of the 4-week foundations. And this is where you start working in the command line. So you'll install something called a hypervisor called VirtualBox. And in that hypervisor, you'll start installing virtual machines. And you'll install your first Linux machine using an operating system called Kali Linux, which is the most commonly used Kali Linux distro used by red teamers, by offensive security researchers. And you'll start to learn some basic Linux commands, so you start to get comfortable working in the command line environment. And then the last week of foundations, you're getting into Python, right? So very basic. If you've never had any exposure to programming or to Python, that's okay. We're going to start at the beginning with basic things like functions, conditional statements, loops, and so forth. So by the time you finish foundations, you've already started studying the command line, working VirtualBox and Kali Linux and basic Python, okay? Now, when you finish foundations, 4 weeks, at the end, there's a checkpoint here, okay? And you can see it's kind of like a red stop sign, because if I go up to the top right-hand corner, here's the key here. If you have this icon there, it's a gateway checkpoint, so you need to pass it to continue, okay? So at the end of foundations, you need to pass the assessment at the end in order to continue on into the boot camp. Okay, so assuming you do pass the checkpoint, you move in, then you successfully graduate from foundations and you move into the boot camp. And then still zoomed out at the high level here. Now we're in week 1 through 13 of the boot camp. And first we're going to start, well, actually at a very high level, you can see some red and you can see some blue here. I'm going to go into the details here, but if you're not familiar with red team versus blue team, so red team is offense and blue team is defense, right? And most of the jobs in cybersecurity are on the blue team. About 85% of jobs are on the blue team. But the reason we teach red team as part of this program is because if you know red team, if you know offense, if you know how to attack, you're going to be a better defender. You develop something that you'd learn about in Hacking 101 called the security mindset. The security mindset. And so you're going to learn some basic security essentials here, then you're going to your red team training, and then your blue team training. So let's zoom into each. Okay. So first 2 weeks in the boot camp are what we call security essentials, where you'll go deeper into the command line, into networking, and get started with scripting using something called Bash. So deeper into the command line, you'll start working in the Windows command line, because in this program you're working on Windows and Linux. Then you'll get into more sort of advanced networking that's specifically tactical for hackers, skills you need to learn for hackers. Intro to scripting, and then you go deeper into Python, specifically Python for automating routine InfoSec tasks, okay? And so you can see here in this last row here, tools, not last row, but one of those tools that you learn. And so you can see a bunch of tools here. A lot of this will be jargon to you at this point, and that's okay. The point I want to make here is that this program is a very hands-on program, right? So we're teaching you the specific tools. We try to be as light on theory as possible and heavy on practicality and actual hands-on work with these tools. And so you can see an example of some of those tools here. Okay, so you finished Security Essentials, and now you're ready to start your Red Team training. So for Red Team, what you're going to do is learn advanced ethical hacking skills by working through Offensive Security's penetration testing with Kali Linux, which is the official prep course for the OSCP exam. Now, if you haven't heard of Offensive Security, they're a company that does a couple of really interesting things. First of all, they run the Kali Linux project that's used widely throughout the industry. And they also run the OSCP certification. The OSCP certification is the most advanced, respected Red Team certification out there. It's not for the faint of heart. It's a 24-hour exam. I'll just let that sit there for a second. It's a 24-hour exam, and you need to hack into 5 boxes over that 24 hours. Most people do not pass OSCP the first time they take it. They need to take 2 or 3 attempts. But if you're committed to working on the Red Team when you graduate, don't worry, you're not going to have the answer to that now. You'll have an answer to that. You'll be able to answer this as you go through the program. But if you want to try to work on the Red Team after you graduate, then I would recommend trying to sit for the OSCP exam. As a matter of fact, the cost of the exam is included in the tuition for the boot camp. Okay, but basically, essentially what you're going to do is walk through the TTPs, tools, technologies, and processes, related to penetration testing. Penetration testing is really ethical hacking, right? And so oftentimes companies will hire ethical hackers to try and penetrate, to try and break into their systems to see where vulnerabilities are, to see what they need to fix, right? And so you're going to be walking through the basic steps of a pen test. Okay, so first of all, know your target. Assess your target, do things like active and passive recon. A lot of this work you're doing in the command line. Exploit your target using common tools like Metasploit. You're going to try and open shells on different machines and deploy payloads onto them. And then once you get access to a machine, you're going to want to try and escalate your privileges, try and get what you call root access, so you can really work within that machine. Then at the end of the Red Team training, there's a Red Team hackathon. So teams work with and against each other to break through some additional boxes. And then there's more lab work on advanced topics. So you can see for the Red Team training, it's very hands-on. There's a lot of tools that you're learning in the Red Team training. And then actually going back to the Red Team hackathon, that during this hackathon at the end, each team gets up in front of the class and talks about how they broke into a box. And we make a video of that team presentation, which you can then put on your LinkedIn profile, for example. So if I go back up to the glossary at the top, you can see there are certain points where videos are recorded, and these are videos that you can use for your career development purposes. Okay, so now if I zoom back out again, so now by week 6 of the boot camp, you've finished your Red Team training, and then you go into what we call async week or cert week. So basically, you're not on campus during this week. You'll be working from home at your own pace. You won't have any instructional support this week because you'll be taking one of the certification tracks shown below. Okay, so you can see the bottom row here is optional certifications. And so certifications are different depending on your profile, depending on what sort of job you're trying to get. If you want to work on the Red Team, then we're going to recommend during cert week, we call it async week or cert week, that you do your first attempt at OSCP. Why not? You've just done the official prep course, and the cost of the exam is included. So we recommend you do your first attempt at OSCP. But probably for the larger percentage of students who are going to target working on the blue team, then here we'll recommend you get an entry-level certification called Security Plus. The training, Security Plus is more sort of knowledge-based. It's not really technical. So it is an entry-level certification. What's good about Security Plus is it gets you through HR filters, right? Security Plus is the most common entry-level cert for this field, and just having it helps you when you're applying to jobs. So if you're not doing OSCP, we're going to recommend you take Security Plus at this point. Okay, so now, zooming back out, now we're ready to go into the blue team. We've done our red team training. We've developed the security mindset, and now we're going into the blue team training. And for blue team, you'll see this part of the bootcamp is less technical and more about storytelling. So you'll work through various scenarios and simulations that will be similar to what you'll encounter in the real world as a blue teamer at a large company. And here, we're working through something called the NIST cybersecurity framework. And there's sort of 5 main categories here: identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. So for example, respond, develop and implement appropriate activities to take action regarding a detected cybersecurity incident. And you'll be able to do things like, how do you manage a security incident? How do you react to live attackers? Who needs to be notified and when? So that's blue team phase. Even though it's more story-based, you are still learning a number of tools, and you can see some of them here, including a tool called Splunk, which is very in demand in the industry right now. So at the end of blue team training, here you're going to attempt another certification. So this one is called the CISA certification, Cybersecurity Analyst, and it is required to take this exam in week 12. Now, it's not required to pass it. It is required to take it, though, to attempt it. And during the blue team phase, you're going to be covering literally all the material that's required to pass the CISA exam. And so like it says here, having your CISA cert will make it easier/faster to get hired as a security analyst. So you're required to take the CISA exam in week 12 when you have learned all the material. If you don't pass the test, you can opt to try again in flight. Each time you take the exam, CompTIA, which is the organization that issues the exam, will charge you $348. So definitely good if you can pass it on the first attempt. Just to give you a sense, in our first cohort, which just graduated a week and a half ago, something like, about a week ago, we had a 91% pass rate. 91% of our students passed CISA on the first attempt. And so that's 21 out of 23 students. And the 2 who didn't pass are taking it now right after they graduate. So we expect the number for CISA pass rate to be around 100% within 2 to 3 weeks of graduating. So that's what you'll be doing at the end of week 11. Then you start to pull everything together, right? So you've got projects week. And so the main thing here is your capstone project, where you'll, oops. Let me zoom back in here, sorry. So your capstone project. So you'll build a final project. You'll build something called a proof of concept, which is a thing in the InfoSec world. And you know, during blue team phase, you'll decide what your final project is going to be. Your project can be either red team themed or blue team themed, depending on sort of what your career trajectory is. And then the following week, so you spend about a week working on your project on a team, working with to build your final project. And then the following week is launch week. And so for launch week, you'll work from home this week and come to the Global Cyber Center, which I'll describe in a moment, which is in Chelsea, for a couple events. So first is launch day. So on Tuesday morning, it's actually Monday morning, we changed that. You'll get on stage, present your capstone project in front of a live audience. The event is live streamed on YouTube for employers to watch. And then the following Friday morning, you'll come back to the Global Cyber Center for hiring day, where you'll do speed round of hiring interviews with employers in New York City. Now, students typically will not get a job offer at hiring day, right? But what happens is we're like a matchmaker. So we work with a bunch of employers and who need cybersecurity talent, and we're graduating a lot of cybersecurity talent. And so we're just like a matchmaker. So hiring day, you'll do a speed round of interviews with a number of employers, and then you will work with them directly to hopefully continue that interview process. And then once you get into flight, like I described before, you'll spend about 50% of your time doing job search tasks, and then another 50% of your time doing continuous learning and possibly getting your first advanced certification. So CISA is what we think of as an intermediate level certification, but then there are advanced level certifications. So if you want to be on the red team, great. Do your second attempt at OSCP, maybe you did your first attempt here, or do your first attempt here. More likely you want to be on the blue team, and so we're going to recommend you study for something called the CISSP certification, which is by far the most widely recognized advanced cert in cybersecurity. The challenge is that for CISSP, you need 5 years of experience, right? Obviously, you're not going to have that when you graduate from the boot camp, but what you can do is a little hack, right? So you can take the CISSP exam, pass it, and they will give you something called the ISC Associate. So ISC is the organization that puts out the CISSP. You'll be an associate of ISC for the CISSP. Is that enough acronyms for you? But basically, it's the CISSP pending 5 years of experience. So it shows employers that you have the skills that they need to hit the ground running on their security team. So we're going to recommend you go for your first advanced cert while you're out there getting your first cybersecurity job. So then you're sort of launching yourself into this field where we just looked at, 3 million open jobs now, 3.5 within 2 years, average entry salary is shown here. Okay, so that is the course poster for the full-time program. Now, let me go back into Chrome. Okay. So obviously getting a job is the goal, right? It's the main part of the equation here. So there is also a career development part of this equation. So I'll just sort of read through this here. At Fullstack, we believe knowing how to get a job is just as important as knowing how to do a job. So while our instructors are hard at work building your technical skills, our career success team will be making sure you graduate totally ready for the job search. And even after you graduate, our career counselors will be there to keep you motivated, prepare you for interviews, and even negotiate offers. So there's sort of 8 main categories of things that your career success coach will work on you with. So building a technical resume, and by technical resume, I mean one that's optimized for work as a cybersecurity practitioner. Optimize your LinkedIn profile, again, for InfoSec, network within the InfoSec industry, prepare for behavioral interviews and technical interviews as well. Stay motivated on the job search, craft your cover letters, correspond with recruiters who work within companies that are hiring, and even negotiate offers. So you're spending a lot of time working with your dedicated career success coach, starting in the blue team phase and then going on into flight. Okay, so if we sum all this up, right, you can see it's a full-time program, 17 weeks, so your 4 weeks of foundations, and then the next 13 weeks, so it's a total of 17 weeks. And you can think of it as an analyst and penetration tester bootcamp. Okay, so you're going deep into pen testing, going deep into the blue team, and you can see the certs that we just talked through here. Now, we have had over the last few months, as we've been launching the school, like I mentioned, the first cohort just graduated, the second cohort started today, actually a few feet away from me, the bootcamp phase of the program. But we've had a lot of students that we've talked to say, hey, this program sounds really cool. I'd love to do it, but I have a job, I have a job, right? And I can't take off full time to go through a bootcamp program like this. So we are actually rolling out a part-time version of this program. And actually, you're some of the first people to hear about it. It just went live on the website today. And I want to show you how they compare and contrast. Okay, so you get your full-time program, 17 weeks, part-time program, 26 weeks. It's not analyst and penetration tester bootcamp. It's analyst bootcamp, right? So you're training to become a security analyst. You're training specifically to get hired on the blue team, right? And so we're teaching most of the same material, except we're not going as deep into red team training, right? So we're not doing the official prep course for OSCP. We're just teaching you the basics of penetration testing, the basic TTPs. So you've gone through each stage of the pen testing process. You know how they work. You know the language. You know the most commonly used tools. You've started to develop that security mindset, so you can then go into the blue team training. So the blue team training, we're teaching the same amount of content. Red team training, we're teaching less. And if you look at the total number of hours for the program, when you factor in class and homework as well, the full-time program is about 724 hours total. Part-time program, it's 16 hours per week, right? So it's Tuesday and Thursday nights, 6:30 to 9:30 p.m. So that's 6 hours right there. Then Saturday is 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. That's another 4 hours. That gets you up to 10. And then there's about 2 hours of homework required for each day of class. So it's a total of 16 hours per week. Class time and homework, 26 weeks, so it's about 416 hours. So you can see 724 by 416, and the main difference is you're going deeper into the red team training here in this program. Now, what you may be saying when you see this is, well, which one do? I don't know if I want to do red team yet. And so how would you choose? And the way I would answer that is to just say, if you have a job and you want to keep your job, then I do the part-time program, right? So you can always go, once you complete this program, you can always go back. If you really found that you really love the red team work, you can go back and you can then study for the OSCP, take PWK, right? But I would, if you can do the full-time program, great. If you already have a job, I would recommend the part-time program. Now the certifications are also slightly different here as well. So for the part-time program, you can see there's no OSCP since we're not teaching OSCP level of material, but you are still taking the CISA at the end of the blue team phase. It's Cert Week 1, we call it. Then you have 2 weeks of project work, so that's your final project. And then Cert Week 2, here we're going to recommend you go back and get your Security Plus. So intermediate, beginner level, Security Plus is a subset of what's in CISA. So if you can pass CISA, then you can certainly pass Security Plus. And then the reason we would have you go back, we recommend you go back and do Security Plus here is, again, so you can get past the HR filters when you're trying to get hired. Okay, so those are the full-time and the part-time programs. Now, let's look at the costs involved in the program. So let's look at the full-time program first. Excuse me. So prep course, Hacking 101 is free. The tuition for the full-time bootcamp, $17,610K. There are a couple other expenses, $17,610. There are a couple other expenses that you need to be aware of. So first, you need to bring your own laptop. It needs to have at least 16 gigs of RAM. Windows or Mac is fine, since you're going to be running virtual machines on it anyway. But you do need a laptop with at least 16 gigs of RAM. If you can afford a MacBook with 16 gigs of RAM, that's great, that's fine, but they're very expensive. By default, we recommend a Windows laptop. If you just go to newegg.com and just do a search for laptops with 16 gigs and then sort by price, you'll see a lot of different options from a lot of different brands in the $500 to $700 range. Okay, so let's say that's $600. Then there's also a course fee. So it's $400 and it covers the cost of the program materials. For example, a textbook that you'll use in the blue team phase. And also one exam voucher to take the CISA. So it's $348 that you saw. So that's included one exam sitting in the course fee. Now, in terms of optional certifications, if you want to do the OSCP, like I mentioned, it's included in the tuition. If it counts for Security Plus, if you want to do that, that's $339. And these are fees that you pay directly to CompTIA when you go to an official test center to take the exam. And then if you want to sit for the CISSP while you're in flight, that's about $700. Now, when we look at the part-time program, you can see it's basically the same, except for the tuition is about $1,600 less. And so the total price here is $16,980 for part-time, total cost, right? Versus about $18,610 for the full-time program. Now, let's say you're doing the full-time program. To put that number into context, you may say $18,000, that's a lot of money. Yes, that's a lot of money, right? But you need to look at it in terms of the ROI equation, right? And this isn't just for Fullstack, considering a program at Fullstack, it's for any educational investment you're looking to make. Look at what you're going to spend and what you're expecting to get out of making that investment, right? And so for here, you're going to spend this to get you into market with a lot of open jobs and an average entry-level salary of this. So it's not a direct, all right, I spend this, oops, and I get this, but it's sort of, it paints the big picture in terms of why you're making this investment, what you expect to get out of it. Now, a couple other things about paying the tuition is that we're partnered with an organization called Skills Fund. In fact, most of our students, either in the coding bootcamp or the cybersecurity bootcamp, use the Skills Fund to pay their tuition. They'll essentially pay your tuition and give you a loan for that, right? And so Skills Fund partners just with coding bootcamps like Fullstack. And we've actually created a program through Skills Fund has just for Fullstack Cyber Bootcamp, where they'll pay your tuition and they'll give you a loan. It's about $400 a month for about 5 years. One thing that a lot of our students like to do is schedule their loans so that you don't start making payments until about 3 months after graduation. So you give yourself time to get hired and get that new income stream coming in. And you can also, this is another thing we've arranged with Skills Fund just for the cyber program, is you can include what they call a cost of living allowance of up to $6,500 in your loan. And so, for example, that can help pay your rent while you're in the program, but also if you need to use it to pay for the course fee or the laptop or any of these optional certifications, you can use those funds as well. And so you take out a loan for this much, and then whatever else you think you may need, whatever other certs you may need to take. So that's Skills Fund, very popular. Probably most of our students use Skills Fund. Okay, let's look at cohort dates, the next cohort dates. So the next one that's available, the application for full-time, the application deadline is next month on the 25th, and then it starts foundations on December 9th. The next part-time cohort, actually the first part-time cohort, application deadline is in January, and the program starts on February 4th. All right, so I talked a little bit about before about our ethical code of conduct. It's something I wrote it, but it's open sourced, and so it's I call it the White Hat Manifesto, and basically it's just well, I'll show it to you. Right? It's basically an ethical code of conduct. So as a hacker, I will and I won't. So I will be honorable, be responsible, be reliable, treat people fairly with respect. Respect people's privacy, keep my skills and knowledge current through lifelong learning, be active in the community, give back, build projects, be willing to share what I learn, submit only original and authentic work, and inspire and support aspiring hackers that come behind me. As a hacker, I won't be an asshole, be dishonest, be deceitful, do things that are illegal, make any misleading or false representations to my peers, raise unnecessary alarm, or, this is an important one, give unwarranted comfort, sadly. Disclose any confidential information without the specific consent of the owner, and work in InfoSec just for the money. Yes, people get paid well in InfoSec, but you shouldn't do it just for the money. You should do it because you want to help make the world a little bit safer. I will do what I can to help the world a safer place. I promise to only hack hardware, software, and/or networks in ways that are consistent with the values above. In resolving any conflicts, I will first consider public safety, then duties to individuals, then duties to the profession. And then we'll ask you to sign that with either your real name or your hacker name before you get into the program. It's really important to us. And hopefully to you. Okay. I just want to spend a minute here talking about a project called Cyber NYC, which you may or may not have heard of. If you haven't heard of it, New York City describes it as this. It's a $100 million public-private investment to make New York City a global leader in cyber innovation and to catalyze 10,000 jobs. So basically what New York City is trying to do is to turn New York City into like the Silicon Valley of cybersecurity and to create 10,000 cybersecurity related jobs here. And so you hear, different governments, different cities around the world are looking to do similar things. But I would say that I think New York City has as good a shot as any other government, if not a better shot. And it's the organization that's behind this called the New York City EDC, Economic Development Corporation. Really smart group of people. Their heart is in the right place. They're investing in meaningful initiatives like Cyber NYC. And this is actually the same team of people that, if you heard in the news, 6 months ago, the Amazon deal. Remember when Amazon was supposed to come to New York City? Don't get me started. I think that should have happened. But it's the same group of people that were bringing Amazon to New York City who are building Cyber NYC. So really smart group of people, and we're excited to be partnered with them as part of it. This boot camp is actually the official cybersecurity boot camp of New York City and of Cyber NYC. So there's different work streams that they call it within Cyber NYC, I don't have time to go through all of them. You can certainly check out cyber-nyc.com. But we are like I mentioned, the boot camp part of the Cyber NYC project. Now, Cyber NYC, if you're curious to learn more, it has been covered pretty widely in the press. So you can go to the Fullstack Cyber Bootcamp website and just click on the press page, and you can read a bunch of the press. So for example, New York Times, about a year ago, a plan to turn New York into a capital of cybersecurity. TechCrunch, New York City wants to build a cyber army. So there's some really good articles here covering Cyber NYC. Now, since it's government, there are politicians involved, so we're really excited to have the support of, for example, City Councilman Paul Vallone, who said, in this 21st century era, continuously finding new and innovative ways to rise and meet the challenge of cybersecurity threats present to society is critical. Fullstack Cyber Bootcamp will train, certify, and prepare New York City's next generation of cybersecurity professionals and launch them into highly in-demand and vital cybersecurity careers, making our city more prepared to inventively face the challenges of tomorrow. And here's a quote from the president of EDC, James Patchett, who says, New York City is proud to support the launch of Fullstack Cyber Bootcamp. The rapid rise of cybersecurity has created vast opportunities and in-demand jobs within the industry. Fullstack Cyber Bootcamp promises to train students of today to fill the jobs of tomorrow in this burgeoning sector. So we're really happy and honored to have the support of the New York City government on this project for this important school. Now, the curriculum that we just looked at, we didn't design it in a vacuum. We actually worked with government and industry to develop that curriculum. So some of the companies and organizations that you see here, we've worked closely with are on the advisory board for Cyber NYC. And before we even started developing the curriculum, we said, what do you need us to teach? What skills do you need people to have to get hired? And so that informed our curriculum design, not only the initial design, but going forward. And I think that's something distinctive about this school. It's not just Fullstack putting this together. It's really New York City. It's New York City industry, New York City government, and Fullstack pulling it all together. So really focused on teaching skills that might make our graduates marketable, hireable. Okay, and there are some program partners here. So for example, Goldman Sachs and, Facebook. Okay, so we've talked about the big picture, what's happening in cyberspace. We've talked about why this is creating a huge opportunity for people entering the space. We've given an overview of the program and looked at the curriculum. So let's talk about next steps. If your interest is piqued, right, in this topic as a potential career path, here's what I would recommend as next steps to get started. Quite simply, first stage in the journey. What is it? Every great journey begins with a single step. Am I mutilating that one? So Hacking 101, take Hacking 101. And after taking Hacking 101, hopefully you'll have a much better sense on if this field has captured your imagination and you want to try and go down this path. To take Hacking 101, just go to our website, cyber.fullstackacademy.com. Click on the Prepare button, and then go down to Hacking 101, and you'll see the course description, and you can put in your first name and email and get started right away. Then after taking 101, if two things have happened, okay? If the world of cybersecurity has captured your imagination and you think this would be a fun career path with good income potential, and you really think you could really geek out on this stuff and get into it, then I would encourage you to apply. But I wouldn't make that decision yet until you've taken Hacking 101. You have more context and you have more understanding of what it's really like to work in cybersecurity, and if this is a good path for you. So that's it in terms of the presentation. I do want to get into Q&A, so let me open up the chat here. Okay, let's see here. Let's start at the clear sound. Okay, so go ahead and post questions. Let's see, we have 1738, I'm not sure what that number is. Steal Bitcoin. Okay. Coinbase, yeah, I'll tell you what, if you're Coinbase, and I've got some friends at Coinbase, then you've got to have a really strong security story, because you are a rich, ripe attack surface for any number of hackers. What is your hacker name? My hacker name is Digitize My Life. Answers to Beach and other Q. I'm not going to give you the answer to Beach. You guys, somebody will have to post it. I'll tell you if it's right. 38, yes. VO, you got it. And VO, if you want to explain in chat how you came up with that answer, then feel free to do so. Questions? Does anybody have any questions? How many students per cohort? So the average cohort size is going to be 32 students. 32 students. Can you repeat that question again, please? Question again, please. Yes, how many students per cohort? Average cohort size is 32 students. Okay, so I see someone has a raised hand, but just go ahead and, okay, here we go. From Victoria, how to choose between red team and blue team. To me, it will be a very complicated decision to make. Yeah, right. I would say you can't make that decision yet. And that's why I tell people, don't even decide if you want to apply to this school until you've taken Hacking 101. And let me describe what Hacking 101 is, right? Hacking 101, it's about a 6-hour course, but there's no actual work. You're just kind of like sitting back and soaking up the information. The work is just, well, the first 4 hours, it's almost like Netflix binging, but on videos about cybersecurity, like news clips, footage, documentary footage about seeing hackers in action. And hackers, I mean, the hackers is a compliment to me, but specifically black hats in action, right? Basically what Hacking 101 is, when you start that course, you'll open up an app called Global State of Cyber. It's a map of the world, and you click on different parts of the world, and you'll see like, black hats attacking the power grid in Ukraine, attacking wireless devices in New York City, attacking voting machines in Las Vegas, whatever types of attacks they are. But you watch 4 hours of this news footage. By the end of the 4 hours, if you're like most viewers, you'll feel slightly overwhelmed because you know what's happening, right? You hear it in the news every day. You know what's happening, but to see clip after clip after clip after clip showing you these hackers in action, these bad guys in action, it really paints a vivid picture about how bad it is out there. And that's what we want to do. We want to inspire people to say, you know what? I want to help out. I want to help out. And so by the time you finish the Global State of Cyber app, then we get into about 2 hours of what it's actually like to work in cybersecurity. And that's where we go deeper into red team and blue team and the differences, day in the life, salary expectations and those sorts of things. But the truth is you're not gonna be able to decide until you start going through this program and you start doing some red team work and you start doing some blue team work and you learn more about it. And so that's why we've structured this program that you don't have to make that decision until you're in the program and sort of approaching the end of the program. And you decide, all right, now I know what blue team is, now I know what red team is, and I know what I want to do. What I would say is don't worry about it right now. You'll learn what you need to know to be able to make that decision. And another common question is, what certs should I take, right? I laid out some optional certs and some recommendations, but again, don't stress out about that. That's part of this program. We will help guide you through that process and answer those questions in the best way for you. Okay, have you ever had 100% pass rate for the OSCP? Why is it difficult? And this is from, sorry, I'm not going to try and pronounce your last name. Or your first name. License? I did try. Okay. All right. So like I mentioned, OSCP is, almost no one passes it the first time. And we manage expectations with the students to say, if you're going to attempt it, call it your first attempt, right? That's a part of the process. I'd say it's probably sub 10% of people who pass it on the first time. Okay. So in the first cohort, we did not have any we had, I think, 7 out of the 23 students attempt it. We didn't have anyone pass it, but we had a couple of students who came very close, and they're studying for it again right now that they've graduated. So we expect to have our first couple OSCP graduates within the next couple of weeks. Why is it difficult? Because what's great about OSCP is it's almost like, if you've ever heard of the Tough Mudder competition, which is like running a marathon, but there's all sorts of physical obstacles, puddles and things you have to climb over. It's just pure torture, it sounds like. The OSCP exam is almost like the Tough Mudder of certs, in the sense that it's really grueling, 24-hour exam. And it's not about you either have the skills to hack into the boxes or you don't. And that's why it's so respected, because it is so difficult. Another question, do you recommend this program for computer science majors in college, second year? Computer science will definitely help you, especially on the programming side. You don't need to do too much engineering or programming work to get hired as like a security analyst. But if you want to get hired as a security engineer, then there is programming required there. I'm not sure if you're a computer science programmer, I'm not sure what language you're working in. But yes, well, if you have computer science background and you want to go into cybersecurity, then you'll probably find it easier to get hired. But programming is not, that's a nice to have, not a have to have, I would say. And if you're in a computer science program in college, second year, so I guess you're in college full-time, so maybe you'd want to do this sort of a program over the summer. We do have students who come to the boot camp, college students who come to our various boot camps over the summer. Also, some from Victoria, also we'll be recording of this webinar available to review it. Yes, we usually just distribute the slides, but we can distribute the video as well. So Victoria, I will make sure that we do that. Okay, so let me find some other questions. So let's see, we got, okay, so VO gave, okay, good. Right, all right, that is the correct answer to the brain teaser challenge. Okay, question from Mina. Can you go back to the slide, the starting dates of the cohort? Sure. Let's see. I think it's, yeah. Okay, so next available cohort starts for full-time December 9, and for the part-time starts, the first part-time cohort starts February 4th. Okay. All right, Edward, I'm currently enrolled in graduate school for systems software engineering. I think I've heard that a software engineer is not the same as a cyber professional, but there's quite a bit of overlap. Most of the cyber work can be done remotely. I've watched a couple cool videos of a red team in Minnesota social engineer our way into an energy company. Fun fact, Edward, that video that you're referencing is one of the videos in Hacking 101 video I'm thinking about. So yes, software engineer is definitely different from cybersecurity analyst. Sort of a mental model you can think of is, as an engineer, as a programmer, you're thinking about how to build stuff. That's great. That's a superpower, right? It's very cool. As a hacker, whether you're a defender or attacker, you're thinking about how to break stuff, right? How things can be broken and how you solve for that. So it's a really different mentality. And depending on which niche you go into in cybersecurity, engineering will or will not be important to that equation. So if you're currently enrolled in a graduate school for systems software engineering, that's great. And we have students who have done computer science programs coming into this program. And it's definitely, like I said, it's nice to have, not a have to have. It's a nice complement to your programming studies. If you want to go into cybersecurity. If you don't want to go into cybersecurity, then don't do it. But if you do, it's a really nice complement. Question from John. What is the assessment after the foundations like? What about Networking Plus? Okay, so the assessment after foundations really pulls together all the things that you learn in foundations, like, kernels versus operating systems, the OSI model, where there's a few questions on different layers of the OSI model. There's some Linux command line questions and there's some Python questions. So as long as you keep up with the material, going through foundations, you should be okay to pass that exam. But just remember, you have to pass foundations to get into the bootcamp. And if you don't, then we will invite you to do what we call a replay, which means you can do foundations again to start with the following bootcamp. From Edward, did you mention costs for the program? Yep, we went through the costs, which you can see here. Full-time, $17,610, part-time, $15,980, and then you add the laptop and the course fee. So you can see the approximate costs here, $18,610 for the full-time, $16,980 for the part-time. Okay, what about math? Yeah. Not sure I understand that question. Okay, did any of the students attempted the CEH exam? So CEH is, how would I describe CEH? No, I don't think we've had any of our students take the CEH. CEH, if you compare like the difficulty of red team exams, right, or certs, probably at the entry level you have CEH, which is more, so for anyone who doesn't know CEH, Certified Ethical Hacker, but it's more like a Security Plus type of exam. It's not hands-on, you're not in the command line doing stuff, you're answering multiple choice questions. That's CEH, that's kind of the entry level cert. A more mid-level cert for Red Team is called Pen Test Plus. So it's another CompTIA exam, which is more hands-on. It's offered by, like I said, CompTIA, and that's more hands-on. It's pretty decent exam if you want to get into pen testing. But the really the most respected, difficult exam on Red Team is going to be your OSCP. Okay, another question from Edward. But I will be learning much cyber in this program, Roger. Okay. All right, from VO. Do you have any data on the pass rate for the last test, CISSP? No, because the first cohort just graduated. And it's really up to the students if they want to sit for the CISSP. And so each student is sitting down with their career coach, her name's Jackie, to sort of map out where they want to go next. So we'll see in the next couple months how many students actually want to sit for the CISSP and what our pass rate is. So we'll have some data on that in the next few months. Question from Roman. So even if you fail the admissions test, you get to do it again. Unfortunately, the admissions test, there is only one attempt on the admissions test. It's kind of difficult to prep for the test, but if you want to try and you can't really study for it because it's just like math brain teasers. But what you can do is there's different math brain teasers. So if you just Google math brain teasers, you'll see a number of different sites that have them, just for fun, brain teasers. Khan Academy has some really good math brain teasers. So you can sort of, if you want to get sort of your brain going in that sort of mode, just try doing some math brain teasers before you take the admissions exam. Another question from VO. Cryptography is, as far as I understand, tends to be fairly math intensive, correct? My question about math is asking if there's a baseline of math skills necessary. That's a great question. All right, so cryptography is sort of like, if you think of the InfoSec spectrum of easy stuff to hard stuff, right? Crypto is over here, cryptography is over here. That's the most mathematically intensive, difficult, complex part of this whole equation. But chances are you are not going to have to write cryptography algorithms in your day-to-day job. There's very few people who do that. You'll have to use other people's cryptography algorithms, the most popular ones, the most secure ones, but you're not going to have to write your own crypto algorithms. If you want to write your own crypto algorithms, then yeah, you're going to need you're going to need advanced calculus, you're going to need, advanced math studies to get into that field. So if you're a mathematician, cryptography is a natural fit for you. Probably chances are for most people are not mathematicians, and so crypto will be hard. Linear algebra, yep. But no, you need to have basic math skills, but we're not going to test you on things like trigonometry, right? You just need to be generally good at math, but not really advanced math. Okay, another question from VO. Does it make a difference as you continue in the field through higher level roles to have a master's degree or an advanced degree? Good question. Here's the way I would answer this one. New York City, sort of their mandate to us is that they want this program to be accessible to as wide a range of New Yorkers as possible, even those who haven't been able to go to a four-year college. Because the fact is, I'm not speaking for any other industry, but in cybersecurity, because there's such a desperate skills shortage, talent shortage, they need people with the skills. Oftentimes they don't care as much if you went to a four-year university or this fancy school, right? They don't care so much about the degree. They care about the skills. That's why in any interview, you're gonna have a technical interview. They're gonna grill you on those skills. You gotta have those skills. Will having an undergrad degree or master's degree help get hired? Sure. Yeah, sure. But it's not necessary, and that's something we're trying to prove with New York City, with government and industry in New York City. I'll give you an anecdote. We had, in our first cohort, we had a 17-year-old student who graduated high school at age 16, and he went to Fullstack Cyber Bootcamp as an alternative to college. And he was actually one of the first people hired. He was hired before he graduated as a paid intern at Major League Baseball. That'll probably turn into a full-time job. So we are starting to see students who are doing this program as a college alternative, and I think that's terrific. VO, that's really cool that the mission of the program is to make it accessible. Yeah, that's where our heart's at on this one. That's the big picture. That's the big picture. Okay, I think, do we have any other questions? Last call for questions. One more, okay. Last call for questions. Okay, I think, looks like you raised your hand. I asked you to describe a day as a hacker. Oh, okay. Describe a day as a hacker. Well, it depends. To me, hacker is a complimentary term, right? And so you could be red team or blue team, as we've talked about. The best way to describe each role is for you to actually see videos of a day in the life of different fields, like a security analyst or penetration tester. And you're going to see some of those videos in Hacking 101. There's a day in the life video of a security engineer at Google. There's a day in the life of a pen tester at a small boutique pen testing firm. There's a day in the life video of a pen tester at a large firm, PwC, a big accounting firm. So definitely to really get an understanding for what it's like to work as a hacker, check out those videos. Same thing for being a cybersecurity analyst. Check out the day in the life videos in Hacking 101. Okay, question from VO. So it looks like some people are raising their hands, but go ahead and post it in the chat button if your question's in the chat button. So I saw that CUNY, NYU, and Columbia are also involved. Are you developing curriculum with them? Or is there any further higher level trainings that are part of this bigger project goal? Yes, so there are a number of different universities in New York City who are involved in Cyber NYC. So you mentioned a couple of them here, CUNY, NYU, Columbia, Cornell Tech, and LaGuardia Community College. Fun fact about LaGuardia Community College, they have 50,000 students. 50,000, that's crazy. They're actually the biggest community college in New York City. Anyway, so yes, we're working with, it's a consortium of academic organizations, four-year universities, one big community college, and Fullstack, the bootcamp provider. And so yes, we are working all together. Columbia, Cornell Tech, and NYU together are building something called the Applied Learning Initiative, which is where they're trying to create experiential learning opportunities in cybersecurity. So there's more announcements that they're going to be making on that front. So yes, we are comparing notes with each other. So they're looking at our curriculum, we're looking at what they're teaching, and we're just trying to figure out how we can learn from each other with the common goal of helping to solve the cyber talent shortage. But you're not going to be working, if you come through Fullstack Cyber Bootcamp, you're not going to be working directly with Columbia or these schools, but they are part of the wider Cyber NYC partnership. Question from Tafari. Do you offer Metasploitable lessons, say on exploits? Oh, okay, Tafari. Looks like we have a ringer here. You know what Metasploit is. Yeah, you'll be doing a lot of work in Metasploit. You'll be learning, the latest, for example, top 10 OWASP exploits, if you know what that means. But yeah, when you're in your red team training, when you're doing the OSCP training, you'll be spending a lot of time in Metasploit. But Metasploit is, for those that don't know, Metasploit is almost like this is a terrible analogy, but it's like riding a bike with training wheels in the sense that it makes hacking just kind of easy in certain respects. So we want you to be able to use Metasploit, but we also want you to be able to take off those training wheels and hack into machines without Metasploit. But yeah, you'll be spending a lot of time in there. From VO, by bigger project or goal, what I mean is the city's initiative. Yeah, so what we're at, we're not requiring this, but what we're asking our students to do is, if they go through this program, have a good experience, get hired. I talked about in the White Hat Manifesto, inspire those noob hackers that are coming up behind you. We want you to do that with Cyber NYC. So there's a lot of networking events. This thing called the Global Cyber Center, which I'll circle back to. So New York City is building something called the Global Cyber Center, which opens in November. And there will be a lot of different types of networking events related to InfoSec. So we just want you to be really active in the Cyber NYC community and help us all together build and scale the InfoSec community in New York City. Okay, so another question from Wysians. Sorry about that pronunciation. Just a rundown of specs for a laptop for the best experience to do the program. Processors, graphics, RAM. Sure. So I touched on this a little bit earlier, 16 gigs of RAM minimum, because you're going to be running a bunch of different virtual machines. So you need the power to do that. You need the RAM. You're going to be running automated processes. So Nmap, for example, you're going to want the RAM for that. I would recommend having probably 200 or 300 gigs of free space on your machine. Other than that, you'll be fine. You don't need a fancy GPU or graphics card. Processor, as long as it's a i5 or a relatively new processor, you'll be fine. You don't need to go crazy on your laptop. Just make sure it has minimum 16 gigs of RAM and minimum space, and a relatively late model processor. A and B or Intel is fine. Another question from VO. Do you have any sense of the diversity of the cohorts that you've had so far? Age, gender, people of color, for instance. Yeah, so diversity is another thing we spend a lot of time working on with New York City, because when you look at InfoSec, here's a statistic, which isn't a great one. Actually, if you look at tech in general, 25% of the people who work in tech are women, 25%. In InfoSec, it's even worse. It's 10% in InfoSec. And so we as a community need to do better, right? We need to encourage more people who aren't white males to go into the program, more people of color, more people from the LGBT community. And so that's a really important part of this project. And New York City, we're working with their M&E team, monitoring and evaluation. So we monitor every cohort for all demographic data. And over time, we would love to get to gender parity in this program. For the first cohort, it was 25% female. We'd like to get that up to 50%. But that takes time. There's no like magic wand we can wave. It's just about getting out there, evangelizing the community, and inspiring people to go down this path. But diversity is a really important part of what we're trying to do here. Any other questions? Hoorah. Okay. Great. I feel that way too. All right. Any other questions? Okay, I see a raised hand, but okay. Okay, from Victoria. You mentioned cost for laptop, $600. What if I have a brand new Mac Pro? Should I still pay $600 to get a laptop from Fullstack? Well, you're not actually buying a laptop from us. You just go to Newegg, for example. Newegg is a great place to go, or Amazon or whatever. If you have a Mac Pro, great. If it has 16 gigs of RAM is the question. If it doesn't, depending on the model of MacBook Pro you have, you may be able to upgrade it. So that may be a path for you. But I will tell you, most of our students, it's funny, almost all of our students in the coding bootcamp are on Macs. Almost all of our students in the cybersecurity bootcamp are on Windows laptops, which makes sense if you think about it. Okay. Oh, here's another question. I guess I missed the part explaining about how many hours will we have online classes. All right, so that's foundations. And that's the first month. That's the 4 weeks leading up to the program. And it's about 25 hours per week for the online portion of the program before you come onto campus. Question from Roman. So there isn't any issues with Windows? Not at all. Matter of fact, I would generally recommend Windows above Mac. I'm on Mac, but just from an economics per basis, definitely Windows. Plus on Windows, for your hypervisor. So there's two different types of hypervisors. There's VMware and VirtualBox. And VirtualBox is the open source free one. And VMware is the paid for commercial product, but you can get a free version of VMware on Windows, not on Mac. If you're on a Mac, you have to pay like $100 for it. How long and how many questions is the admissions assessment? I'm not sure the number of questions. I think it takes about 45 minutes to an hour to complete. Any issues using a laptop running Ubuntu? Nope, that would be just fine. Although some of the, you may want to put a hypervisor on there and also run an instance of like Windows 10, because you are going to need to do some stuff on Windows machines. So Ubuntu is fine, but just make sure you have a hypervisor and you're also running Windows. How did you get into Infused? I think that's maybe your autocorrect. Maybe you mean InfoSec? Yeah, so, basically, I feel like for me, everybody's journey is different. For me, I feel like I got pulled into InfoSec. I'm glad I'm here now, right? But for me, I've been helping to run Fullstack since 2015. And what we realized within the first year or two is that the coding bootcamp model really works. Students really learn fast and they're motivated because it's such an academically rigorous program, and then they get hired, right? And so the idea was, well, why don't we just take the same model and build a cybersecurity program? Would it work? And we came up with this idea in late 2016, and we decided not to do it at the time because the coding bootcamp was growing so quickly, and we just felt like, God, we really love to launch a cyber school, but we didn't feel like at the time we could do both well, coding and cybersecurity bootcamp. So it was a tough decision, but we decided not to do it. Then fast forward about a year, and New York City EDC put out an RFP to build a cybersecurity bootcamp exactly like what we were thinking about. And so we put a bid in on that, and we won a contract. New York City invested, this is publicly available information, they invested $8 million in us to build this school. I will say that Fullstack has never taken investment from anyone. And what's been great about that, except YC, Y Combinator, way in the beginning. What's great about that is we haven't had any investors. So the only people we answer to are our students. And the only number we look at is our outcomes, people getting hired. And so we did accept money from New York City, but only because of the scope and the scale of what we're trying to do here. From John, I have both VMware and VirtualBox. Excellent. Either one are just fine. Okay. Any more questions? This is fun. I do like doing these online info sessions. All right. Well, why don't we wrap it up there? We'll go ahead and we'll email you tomorrow the slides we looked at here and a recording in case you need that. And yeah, I would, if you're really considering this field, then the next step I would say is just take Hacking 101. Don't make up your mind yet. Take Hacking 101 and then make up your mind if you want to go down this path. Okay, well, thanks everyone. We'll leave it there and we'll talk soon. Okay.